Long ago, in 1843, Charles Dickens created a story called A Christmas Carol, which told of an old man who despised Christmas and was forced to look into his own past in order to see how it affected those in the present, and how it could affect his future. It was a story about change in those greedy of heart and learning sympathy for those less fortunate. And in 1992, it received a special kind of adaptation. By that, I mean a Muppet one. This is the Muppet Christmas Carol.
Gimme, 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 gimme. Just when you think all your presents are accounted for, that's the time you gotta ask for more.
It's been a while since I looked at anything Muppet related. What was it I reviewed last time?
Bon appetit!
Oh, right. I should probably redo that one, given how badly I made it. But anyway, The Muppet Christmas Carol was another Christmas movie I remember seeing growing up, though for some reason I thought it came out later in that decade and not 1992. Well, in any case, this movie came about not long after Jim Henson's death on May of 1990. Soon, his son Brian was approached in making a movie adaptation to A Christmas Carol, using the Muppets. While the idea would have already been sold to ABC as a television movie, Disney would offer to buy the rights to the script and make it a feature-length movie. Hence, this would become the first feature-length Muppet movie since Muppets Take Manhattan, but also the first to be produced by Disney before their eventual acquisition of the Muppets in 2004. Thus, what we would have is a movie that would utilize the Muppets in various roles, while still starring various human actors like Michael Caine as Ebenezer Scrooge and the like. But otherwise, this is considered to be a close adaptation to Dickens's original story, which I have not read, for the record. While some of my critique will mostly pertain to this movie and what I know of the original story, I may slip in a comparison or two to the time when Disney adapted the story using Mickey Mouse and Friends. But with that said, let's not waste time. Right away, the film states that this movie is in memory of Jim Henson and Richard Hunt. Richard Hunt was a known puppeteer who would perform as like Scooter, Beaker, or Statler, who died 11 months before the film's release, and would be replaced by Jerry Nelson, another well-known puppeteer from this era. And well, this is a good movie to accredit them to, given what happens and all. Also, I love the handmade set pieces of old London. It allows them to work with the puppeteers since, if we're going to be including Muppet civilians on top of human ones, then you better be able to pull this off.
Come along, ladies, here's a nice Christmas turkey. Turkey, get your Christmas turkey. Hey, get back in the box there, Martin.
It's the boomerang fish. Oh, guaranteed fresh. Throw the fish away, and it comes back to me. Get them while they're fresh.
I mean, of course you have the usual cast and crew, like Dave Goelz, Steve Whitmire, Frank Oz, and so on. But they're all playing characters from the original story, with some liberties given to let the Muppet personalities shine through. Speaking of...
I'm creating scarcity. Drives the prices up.
Rizzo, hello! Welcome to the Muppet Christmas Carol. I am here to tell the story.
And I am here for the food.
My name is Charles Dickens.
And my name is Rizzo the Rat. Hey, wait a second. You're not Charles Dickens.
I am too.
No, a blue furry Charles Dickens who hangs out with a rat.
Absolutely.
Even the Muppets know that this is just a story they're telling, and they all have a part to play. Kermit the Frog is playing Bob Cratchit, and in one example of creative liberty, we have Fozzie playing Fezziwig, someone from Scrooge's past, only he's now Fozziewig. But on the subject of Scrooge...
When a cold wind blows, it chills you to the bone.
But there's nothing in nature that freezes your heart like years of being alone.
It paints you with indifference like a lady paints with rouge.
And the worst of the worst
The most hated and cursed
is the one that we call Scrooge.
Unkind as any.
and the wrath of many.
This is Ebenezer Scrooge.
First, the songs in this are all pretty good. given that it's Muppets, of course. And for this song, we see the Muppets relate Scrooge's cold, bitter nature to various things that make him more unlikable.
Bet he would be sour.
Even the vegetables don't like him.
But second, what I find most funny about Scrooge in this movie, Michael Caine acts as if he is the only human in this that isn't considered a Muppet. I mean, in the sense that even humans behave as if the Muppets exist, thus adhering to their humor. Like, no. Michael Caine's Scrooge is very top-notch. He acts like he's part of a Shakespearean piece, acts completely dramatic, and pretends there are no puppets around. His interpretation of the character is one based on Wall Street cheats and embezzlers, as they say. And if this were anything else, this type of performance might put a damper on the otherwise unique charm that Muppets gives us.
Christmas is a very busy time for us, Mr. Cratchit. People preparing feasts, giving parties, spending the mortgage money on frivolities. One might say that December is the foreclosure season. Harvest time for the moneylenders.
But no, I'd argue that it's perfectly fine for this. Because Scrooge is meant to be the biggest sourpuss of the story. There are actual reasons to him being rotten and mean, and he'll be going through major changes. Changes caused by Muppets, mostly. But still, you could say this guy will become closer to a human Muppet character? Oh, and before I forget, many of these sets are designed with movable floors to allow the puppeteers a way to move about, while giving human characters spaces to walk. A lot of the time, Scrooge is walking on narrow planks between the Muppets. It's why a lot of the time you don't see the floor around Scrooge's feet when they use characters like Kermit, who is operated by hand rather than other tools used later. There are still instances where you see like a little wire, but people usually overlook that because our eyes are set on the characters other than the puppetry at work.
At that moment, who should arrive at the door but Scrooge's nephew Fred, his only living relative?
Nephew Fred, I don't see him.
Trust me.
Hello? Uncle?
I should mention that while the narrators have a good few moments of humor, sometimes I feel like they interrupt the movie a little too much. Like, it shouldn't be that much different than like in Wind in the Willows, where it gets used sparingly. It just seems like they're explaining exactly what is about to happen, which can lead into a joke. Sometimes it works.
Come on, Rizzo.
No way, no.
Others not so much.
Nothing that follows will seem wondrous. Why are you whispering?
It's for dramatic emphasis.
Oh.
So anyway, Scrooge's nephew, Fred, played by Stephen McIntosh, is here to invite Scrooge over to Christmas dinner, since even though the guy isn't exactly friendly to even his own nephew, he is still family after all.
On his lips would be cooked with his own turkey and buried with a stake of holly through his heart.
Well, not quite speechless.
Oh, Uncle.
Nephew, you keep Christmas in your own way, and let me keep it in mine.
And Michael Caine is really selling his own impersonation of the character. And for reference, my first exposure to A Christmas Carol was Mickey's Christmas Carol, which featured Uncle Scrooge. Yeah, I know, how deliberate. And while I didn't think much of it at the time, looking back, I mostly just see that as Uncle Scrooge the movie, rather than it being A Christmas Carol. Not to knock it, of course, it's a good adaptation in its own right. It's just, here we have someone who's playing the character he's meant to be, and I actually see him as Ebenezer Scrooge. Another good example is when he gets visited by charity folk, who of course are Bunsen and Beaker, and he gives his thoughts on his idea of charity.
I know how to treat the poor. My taxes go to pay for the prisons and the poorhouses. The homeless must go there.
But some would rather die.
If they'd rather die, then they'd better do it and decrease the surplus population.
Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear.
This is the door. You may use it.
Just as I see Disney's Robin Hood as the definitive interpretation of the character, Michael Caine proves to be my definitive version of the Scrooge character. And he's part of a Muppet movie, for crying out loud. Again, he's pretending like there aren't any puppets around and just playing it completely straight. Yet his existence as the grumpiest character in Christmas-related literature makes him perfect for this kind of movie. With Muppets, you want to see them the most, but Scrooge proves to be one of the few exceptions to having an interesting human protagonist. You still want to see him change, and want to see how our favorite Muppet characters do it in part of the original story. They do follow with a lot of the original tale, with some exceptions. Like the original tale, after Scrooge gives Bob and crew Christmas Day off, much to his reluctance, he returns home and is eventually haunted by the ghost of Jacob Marley, his old business partner. But he's not alone.
It's Ebenezer Scrooge, looking older and more wicked than ever.
I knew he wouldn't disappoint us.
I mean, it was to be expected that if you have either Statler or Waldorf, the other would have to be nearby. So now you have two business partners, who are just as much of hecklers of Scrooge as they are of Fozzie, and they get creative about the warning they convey to him.
There was the year we evicted the entire orphanage.
I remember the little tykes all standing in the snowbank.
With their little frostbitten teddy bears.
We should have known our evil deeds would put us both in shackles. Captive bound, we're double iron, exhausted by the weight. As freedom comes from giving love, so prison comes with hate. We're Marley and Marley.
In just those few moments, we learned so much about what these men were like in their life, and what it will mean for Scrooge if he continues like this. I can't remember the last time I've seen those two in agony of any kind. You know it's serious when two of the most well-known hecklers are suffering from their own greed and avarice. And this was just for a song too. Yet Scrooge has every right to be afraid, even if he still has doubts on what he's seeing.
Expect the first ghost tonight when the bell tolls one.
Can't I meet them all at once and get it over with?
When the bell tolls one.
Now, while this movie features the recurring Muppets you're familiar with, it does feature some original puppets like...
Are you the spirit whose coming was foretold to me?
I am.
But you're just a child.
I can remember nearly 1900 years.
Not really feeling the design of the Spirit of Christmas Past. Mind you, the spirit was meant to be androgynous, and whose age was indeterminable. They were shown to be like an angel, but this just looks off to me. They offer to show Scrooge his past by way of flying.
What are we doing?
Nothing.
What?
Well, just hold on.
What?
Oh, watch out, Rizzo.
No.
So, are they technically part of this world? Or are they just spirits who can sometimes take part of the story by way of comedy? And yeah, some of these effects probably appeared better for the time they were made in, but it's still a good effort on their part to make it look like they're flying with puppets. It still does the part of getting Scrooge to see how much he's changed since he was a child after landing.
I know it all so well, Spirit. The desks, the smell of the chalk.
Those oddly shaped statues of historical figures. Is one of them Frank Oz? We get to see him as a child and how he was always alone. His excuse was being able to get more work done over the holidays. And how is that different from now? Well, after watching his life go by, to the point where he is able to become an apprentice businessman.
I've been apprenticed to a fine company in London. Today, you become a man of business.
I'm looking forward to it, Headmaster.
You will love
What am I looking at?
American way.
Sam. It's just...
Oh, it is the British way.
Ha! We do see him working for Fozziwig. Considering how jolly a lot of the Muppet characters are, how did such a stick-in-the-mud, childlike Scrooge become so mean and bitter? I mean, his boss was a lovable comedian.
Make a little speech.
And it's a tradition for us to take a little nap.
Pay no attention to them. My speech. Here's my Christmas speech. Thank you all, and Merry Christmas.
That was the speech?
It was dumb.
It was obvious.
It was pointless.
It was short. I loved it.
Well, he tried. This movie has a way of getting you all giddy whenever you see a Muppet you know doing stuff they're best known for, and getting somewhat emotional seeing Scrooge trying to be more social when he's always been alone. It's almost a perfectly fine tone thanks to the blending of two mediums. Now, the version of the movie I'm using appears to lack a song that would have followed this scene, called When Love Is Gone, where Scrooge breaks up with Belle because he cared more about finances than her own love. Instead, shortening it to where it cuts to our narrators after Belle says,
"You did once."
Now I did find this scene online and watched it, and
There was a time when I was sure that you and I were truly one, that our future was forever and would never come undone.
well, I think the song is fine and has a good moment where modern day Scrooge sings with Belle as a way of lamenting his decision from long ago. I can agree it could have been a bit shorter. It almost feels like the movie comes to a halt for about 4 minutes, and considering the target audience, they might not last long to let it stick. I don't know. This just seems like a song that was made for A Christmas Carol, but maybe not this adaptation. With that, the past segment is complete, and we are more open to Scrooge being sympathetic than we were 20 minutes ago. Now we get our next spirit, the ghost of Christmas Present.
Come in and know me better, man. Did I already say that?
You did.
I am the ghost of Christmas Present. This is the night before the dawn, before the day of Christmas. Did I tell you that I am the ghost of Christmas Present?
Well, at least he looks more appealing than the last spirit we saw. Jerry Nelson also provides the voice and facial motions for this spirit, and while initially large, he's able to shapeshift to a more standard size through a nice effect. Like the original story, he's very jolly and welcomes Christmas greatly, even having a massive feast. What he doesn't have are ignorance and want, two children that represent society's abandonment of the poor and downtrodden. But I don't think they could fit them underneath this guy with the puppeteers. Oh, and maybe it being too depressing for a Muppet movie.
Oh no! Oh no!
Ah, we shall go out into the world.
I suppose you enjoyed that.
Of course.
Yeah, Gonzo would like pain inflicted on him. That's why he does all his own stunts. And ow! That looked like it hurt.
It's in the singing of a street corner choir. It's going home and getting warm by the fire. It's true wherever you find love, it feels like Christmas. A cup of kindness that we share with another. A sweet reunion with a friend or a brother. In all the places you find love, it feels like Christmas.
Not gonna lie, this might easily be the best song of the movie. With all the positive energy we get out of seeing these puppets, singing and dancing, they really sell you on their belief of Christmas being about the love and care for people. And it's even starting to infect Scrooge a bit, as it was looking like since the start of this segment, since he's being reminded of how much fun he had when he was younger. He's even open to seeing his nephew, seeing what he does during Christmas. While initially into it, he does get sad over how Fred thinks of him as an unwanted creature, but that's why he gets shown Bob Cratchit's house, and knowing who Bob is played by here, guess who the wife is played by?
Peter, do not stop turning that spit. That is the whole secret of a properly roasted goose.
It smells so good, Mother.
It does, doesn't it?
It's nice to see Kermit and Miss Piggy in a happy relationship, and with children that don't look like this. Ew. And how appropriate that Robin, Kermit's nephew, is playing Tiny Tim in this version. As with the original story, despite his frail body and dependency on his family to get by in even a poor social class, he isn't deterred by it, and even his family loves him just as much as he loves them.
Life is full of sweet surprises. Every day's a gift. The sun comes up and I can feel it lift my spirit. Fills me up with laughter. Fills me up with song. I look into the eyes of love and know that I belong. Bless us all who gather here.
Okay, now I'm debating whether this is the best song or the previous one. It Feels Like Christmas does everything to encapsulate the Christmas spirit in such a highly positive way, but Bless Us All might be the most wholesome song in this movie since, aside from using Kermit, this song shows how truly dedicated this family is to each other despite all else. This is the hope they have every year, and if they have each other, they couldn't be happier.
And in our prayers and dreams, we ask you, bless us all.
Tell me if Tiny Tim will live.
That is the future. My realm is the present. However, I see a vacant seat by the chimney corner, and a crutch without an owner. If these shadows remain unaltered, I believe the child will die. But what then? If he's going to die, he'd better do it, and decrease the surplus population.
Oh, Spirit.
As the Cratchit family vanished into the darkness, Scrooge kept his eyes upon Tiny Tim until the last.
Scrooge is getting close to his complete transformation, but he has to say goodbye to his new friend, for he can only be around on this one day, thus leaving him with the final spirit, who casts an eerie fog in the area, the ghost of Christmas yet to come.
I fear you more than any spectre I have yet met.
Oh, this is too scary. I don't think I want to see any more.
Oh, when you're right, you're right. You're on your own, folks. We'll meet you at the finale.
Yeah. Oh.
Cowards! Well, they go down the dimensional green screen portal and to the future. And on this day, some rich snobs and even poor people are gloating over a person's death. Can you guess whose?
Well, I don't know or care why he's gone. I'd just like to know what he's done for his money.
Oh, wouldn't we all?
Well, he didn't give it to me.
Well, it's likely to be a cheap funeral. I don't know a single soul who'd go to it.
I wouldn't mind going. If lunch is provided.
Gee, whoever it was must have been super unlikable. He notices things are rather quiet at the Cratchit household, and for good reason. Tiny Tim, as the previous spirit said, is no more. Only sadness and grief remain in this household.
It's all right, children. Life is made up of meetings and partings. That is the way of it. I am sure we shall never forget Tiny Tim or this first parting that there was among us.
Even with Muppets, you can still cry for them. And at last, the moment of truth when Scrooge sees that the one who was scorned at his death was his own.
Oh, please, Spirit, no. Hear me, I'm not the man I was. Why would you show me this if I was past all hope? I will honor Christmas and try to keep it all the year. I will live my life in the past, the present, and the future. I will not shut out the lessons the spirits have taught me. Tell me that I may sponge out the writing on this stone. Oh, Spirit, please speak to me.
I think he got off lucky, because this was what was in the Mickey Mouse version.
Why, yours, Ebenezer.
The richest man in the cemetery. Please.
Naturally, Scrooge takes to his second chance at life to make right what he had wronged. He donates a large sum of money to the gentleman he turned away. He takes part in singing.
With a thankful heart, with an endless joy, with a growing family, every girl and boy will be nephew and niece to me. Nephew and niece to me. Will bring love, hope, and peace to me. Love, hope, and peace to me. Yes, and every night will end, and every day will start with a grateful prayer and a thankful heart.
He buys a lot of coal for his bookkeepers. He visits Fred at his party to get them gifts. He gets everyone gifts, actually, and I think he might have just used the town's taxes at this rate. And of course, while he does a little fake out in front of Bob and family, he not only gives Bob a raise, but he gives them their feast.
All of us. And so, as Tiny Tim observed,
God bless us.
God bless us, everyone. The love we found, the love we found, we carry with us, so we're never quite alone. The love we found, the love we found, the sweetest dream that we have ever known.
I've forgotten how great this movie was. And now that I'm all grown up, it's even better than I remember. Some adaptations usually go straight with their telling of the story and either redact or add on to it. Others may straight up modernize it, but possibly in a good way. And then you have adaptations like this that keep the setting, but add a little change to who is present. Like have animal people or Muppets. Still, of the ones I've seen, this one is easily among my favorites because it does great of combining the highly memorable Muppets with a story about a lonely, greedy man who learns to love the world during Christmas time and using his vast wealth to bring happiness to others instead of hogging it for himself. Sure, Mickey's Christmas Carol was something I remember liking, and I do want to revisit that one next year, but as of now, the Muppets won me over by being wholesome and being dedicated to story crafting. Michael Caine, despite what you may think of him given his politics nowadays, makes for the best kind of Scrooge, and his performance makes his gradual change more believable. And the Muppets add charm to characters that have been played out time and time again. Their unique personalities bring them new life, and in a time where the Jim Henson Company was still recovering from 2 major losses in their crew, they were able to still pull off a movie that was very Muppet-inspired, and it really shows given all the technical stuff that's present. A lot of the Muppet humor stuck with me, and even some of Gonzo and Rizzo stuff got a laugh, even if I still found some of their meddling a little intrusive. If anything, while what happens with the direction of the Muppet brand will be seen differently by everyone, this was still an important movie that helped show that the Muppets could still press on and continue with their positivity and love. To say I recommend this movie isn't enough. You need to own it. Make it a part of your collection, watch some commentaries on the film, or even watch other people's reviews of it. They likely can do more for it than I ever will. As this year closes, I hope that the coming years will do everyone better, and this movie gives that push you need to press on. With that, I say this: Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays. See you all in the next decade.